Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Tropical MBA podcast, the show for location-independent entrepreneurs. Today, we are throwing a bit of a curveball, and we are going to talk about some business ideas.
Just ideas? Because I'm looking here at the sheet. All right. It says, the world is ending. Let's make some money.
That's correct.
Doomsday.
Nothing like a little bit of fear and upheaval to bring us some glorious business opportunities, boss man. It's easy to get fearful of change, but guess what change is, boss man? Change is opportunity. And
That's
in
right.
2026, there's going to be a lot of change. And a lot of it has to do with technology, weird stuff, upheavals. And there's always an opportunity for us to launch a new product, a new positioning, a new marketing message, an entirely new enterprise around innovators and early adopters, people that are thinking about shifts in society, shifts in technology. When you look back to DC Black New York, these 7 and 8 figure, sometimes 9-figure entrepreneurs who have started these great businesses, it's often because they planted their flag in one of these interesting reframings or launches of technology or societal shifts and became a go-to in that niche. And so I think it's worth looking at some of the changes that are happening in 26 and how our companies might take advantage of them. Because there's so much, Ian. We've got AI infiltrating everything. We've got quantum computing coming along. We've talked plenty about cryptocurrencies. We've got the issue of extraterrestrials. I mean, if you're not hip to this, check out the Cliff's Notes here is a documentary called The Age of Disclosure. Although it costs like $30 to download it, it's one of the most popular movies in the world right now. And you know why? Because sitting U.S. government officials, including Marco Rubio, is on tape saying, this is real, it's a problem, we're going to need to start paying attention to it. Countless officials. Bill Clinton recently went on the record saying the exact same thing. He said, it's going to be weird for you young people, but your lives are ultimately going to be much better. That's also the message of this episode. AI is going to be weird. Quantum is going to be weird. All these trends we're going to talk about today are going to be weird. But guess what weird and change means? It means opportunity for entrepreneurs. And that's the spirit. We're going to talk about this stuff right now.
Awesome. And I'm very excited for you to bring one of your personal passions and kind of cross that professional line. Like somehow I knew it was going to happen this year, that aliens were going to get involved in this business. So here we go.
Email me if you're interested in aliens or cryptoterrestrials or extra. It's a very complicated topic. I wouldn't just want to call it aliens.
Sorry.
Recently read a great newsletter from the Lindy Man who pointed out that these technological trends often feel like opportunities in the beginning and become responsibilities. Like at the beginning, the smartphone comes out. I was thinking, if you were to go back to your high school graduation, and someone was like, what is the craziest stuff that's going to happen in the next 25 years? You'd have to say everybody's face in their phone is a crazy one. Mm-hmm. Social media is a crazy one. The idea of AI is completely wild. The Airbnb, that's kind of sharing economy, Uber's running around.
Self-driving cars.
I saw 4 self-driving cars lined up at a stoplight the other day. A lot of interesting stuff happened. Guess what? It's going to continue to happen. How can we take advantage of it as entrepreneurs? The other thing about the opportunity, responsibility, one is he talked about like how this not only is about technology, like having a smartphone right now is like table stakes, right? You got to have one if you want to compete. I mean, maybe not. There's some people bricking their smartphones and doing deep work all day long. But for most of us, smartphone is an excellent tool and necessary tool to compete. Same thing with online dating. At the beginning of online dating, you're sort of like, I got some dates. Now I got online dating. I got some extra dates. That's pretty cool. But nowadays, it's sort of like for most of the population, if you're not online dating, you're not dating. And so it becomes this responsibility. I got to get these fancy headshots or whatever to get a date. How about an interesting one, societal shift? I've noticed this because I've been looking at the real estate market. Dual income. At the beginning, it's an opportunity. Guess what? Every adult in the household can now go out and get a job because we have the whole infrastructure for that. Guess what? Nowadays in 2025, it's priced in, right? It's hard to compete if you're a single income household. Now all the goods and the services are priced according to dual income households. Now it's a responsibility. Both adults in a household, all four adults in however many household adults you got, they all got to go out and work now. So it's a responsibility.
Don't make kids products. That's on the decline, obviously.
So what we want to do is catch these trends in the early stages in innovation and the early adopter trends, have that great business idea and ride it out as more and more people adopt it. Okay, we're going to talk about 5 interesting trends and some business ideas today. Let's just jump into it. So the first one, Ian, is AI worry. Entrepreneurs and workers alike are equally worried and interested about the opportunities in AI. And what we're seeing in our community is people quickly launching AI workflow agencies. There's a great case study of a former Goldman Sachs employee. His name's Daniel Salzner. He said, I quit my job 10 weeks ago. Today, I have bootstrapped my AI go-to-market agency to 40K MRR. So that's in 10 weeks. He's claiming 40K in MRR. Unilead Labs. But the interesting thing about what Daniel's doing, we have a member named Philippe who's also doing it. We recently had Juan Montero on the show who's doing the same thing. We've got a lot of AI worry out there, Ian. What can you do about it? Provide AI workflow solutions. Look at Daniel. He's went to 40K in 10 weeks. I think this sort of thing's possible. Juan was sharing a similar jumpstart leap in revenue. And so, yeah, while everybody else is being worried about AI, how about you just come in, put a big price tag on it? I mean, this is a bit of the origin story of guy who wrote the Billionaire book that started Tiny.
Andrew Wilkinson.
Yeah, so Andrew Wilkinson always tells his origin story. The way I interpret it is it's like a web development or a design agency, right? Like a UX design agency. And so he would go out and there was all this worry. I remember back in the split testing was a big thing and what color and how are people going to use my app? And Andrew Wilkinson was able to charge huge premiums because they were great at that kind of work. But I think it's hard to hear that origin story nowadays because you're like, yeah, no one's paying that much money for a UX agency unless maybe it's like Meta or something. But people are paying big price tags for AI workflows. And so that's how you can duplicate that kind of story nowadays. So
for now.
Yeah. But that's the thing, you don't have to have an entrepreneurial idea that has it's fine if it has an expiration date because you get rolling, you get relationships, you get capital, and you move on to the next thing like Andrew did with Tiny or whatever. Now he's a billionaire, according to the book. So AI worry, forget about the worrying part. Start yourself an AI workflow agency. The number 2, digital degeneracy. Ian, as technology continues to proliferate, as everybody is heads buried in smartphones, I was doing this high school thought experiment the other day as we were writing the episode, and I was trying to explain to them, you just can't believe the device thing. So I walked into Starbucks and I was doing an analysis of how many people were head in device versus head into analog or conversations. And there was one conversation and everybody else was head in device. What are they doing on these devices? Their behavior is getting increasingly degenerate.
I think there's some degeneracy going on. By the way, I think I heard the technical term for it is actually called the tech lean now.
The tech lean?
Yeah, the tech lean when your neck, gets tired because it's been
sore neck.
looking down so much. It's the tech lean. Yeah.
Okay, that's a business opportunity, is fixing the neck, fixing the hand from this movement here. All these things are big opportunities. I'm glad you're pointing them out. Here, I'll point to one. I bumped into a guy at a cafe the other day. We both got out of our devices, had a little chat. Turns out he's making $100,000 plus a month. Guess what he's doing?
Sports betting.
That's correct. He's analyzing fantasy football on a YouTube channel that is big, but not enormous, approachable. So I dug around a little bit about this. There is a company in a lot of these fantasy sports analysis breakdowns. All these guys are doing is breaking down how to win at fantasy football, which is an enormous trend in America, right? Mm-hmm. But what follows immediately after is sports betting. So in the link of the video, there's a link to a product called Underdog Fantasy, which is a place where you can go do some betting. Their revenues in 2023 for $56 million In 2025, their revenues are $500 million. How about a trend there? Sports betting in America is digital degeneracy. It is big business, and all you got to do is create really cool YouTube videos that talk about something you might be passionate about. Also, they have deals with Omaha Steaks and other brands like that, so you can add on multiple streams of revenue, and you don't have to have any product, which is so cool. You're getting 50% of the revenue for these gambling sites. These gambling sites have always been some of the best affiliate payouts in the digital marketing space. Now, I'm not necessarily a supporter of gambling. I do not gamble.
I just want to throw out my counter idea to this, which is basically rehab for digital gambling. I think it is like at the top of the degen list. And I also think it's basically invisible too. Like a lot of different addictions, like somewhat visible to your friends and family members. This one seems particularly invisible. So I don't know if this is actually a real idea or not, but I do think there's an opportunity there to like counteract the degeneracy in some way, shape, or form for these folks.
Yeah. And I was just going to say something like, I don't know a lot of people in the DC who are big gamblers, but that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe they are. I always had this like Pollyannish view that, you know, once you learn about entrepreneurship, you would never gamble. Play poker is one thing, but maybe do a little bit of fun gambling, but not.
That's where it starts, my friend.
That's where it starts. Here's the thing. With all this stuff, we're talking about some of these negative things, but there's always the positive element, like you're pointing out. You can be the light in the world, right? Like things are getting worrisome. Provide a positive solution to this stuff.
And also, you know, with the AI worry and with the digital degeneracy, and not everything here we're going to talk about is degeneracy, but these are early trends, right? And they don't always stay the same. Like, you know, legislation happens, change in technology happens, right? But if you're an early adopter, you're an early mover, you see these trends, you figure out how to make money, and then you go on to the next thing, whether it's a rehab center or whatnot.
Well, another thing that's like part of this like digital degeneracy trend is like online dating and like all this kind of like stuff in that realm. And I do think there's a lot of room for like positivity in that space too. What about people who, you know, really take that seriously and want like a high-end matchmaking or a high-end coaching service where it's like, hey, I don't want to just play with Tinder or Hinge or Bumble for the next 2 years. Like what I really want to meet someone important to me. And, you know, I don't go to church. I don't drive to an office. Like I need to take this online dating stuff seriously, and I'm willing to pay big bucks to do so. There's increasing number of services that are focused on high-end professionals and creating high-quality, long-term relationships. So that's an opportunity there. Okay, trend number 3, homesteading and preparation. You know, if you want to have some really fun digital shopping experience, head on over to mypatriotsupply.com, where you can order yourself a year's worth of food for one person for the low price of $2,800. That's 2,000 calories a day with a wide variety of meal options. I don't work for them yet, but if My Patriot Supply gives me a call, I bet they pay well because they seem to be crushing it by some standards. By some estimates online, they're a $50 million a year company. I can't get an accurate number. It's a private company. They're just sitting around in their bunkers, counting the cash, cashing in on fear. At the top of each sales page, they remind you of all the impending global catastrophes and then tell you can get some mac and cheese that'll last for 25 years below at a premium. It's fantastic.
So I've done a bit of research here, Dan, because I myself am interested in the prepper lifestyle. In 2023, it was basically a $20 billion industry, moving to a $31 billion industry by 2032. Now, some of that, you know, a lot of the sales of MREs go to the military and whatnot, so I have to believe that that's where some of that is going. But a lot of this is going to preppers. A few things about the MREs. I just want to clear some things up. That you
So what is an
incorrect.
MRE?
So it's essentially like a dehydrated food.
Yeah.
So you add water to it and then you eat it. And the idea is that it lasts a long time. Incorrect. What you said here, sir, I'm going to correct you. Most of these MREs do not last for that long. They don't last 25 years, depending on what the food is. Most of them last like 3 to 7 years. Yes, you can find ones that last longer, but so that's important to know.
If I'm working at My Patriot Supply, that's just LTV, baby. You bought your first one. Your family's good for 7 years. I'm going to email you back as your helpful salesperson. After 3.5 years, I'm going to say, is the family still alive? We still care, right? Let's reorder this mac and cheese.
But I do think that this is a great business, and I want to inject what I think is a better business, not necessarily than My Patriot Supply. Because when I went looking for this type of food, and you're going to fight me on this because you're going to say at least you're still alive, but most of this food is not healthy food.
Okay, now you're really bringing to the table what we need from you, boss man, which is an opportunity to rip, pivot, and jam off of this amazing business, My Patriot Supply. Look, I'm down in the bunker. My family's alive, but I'm a high achiever. It's not good enough.
Correct.
I'm going to need to meet my macros down here.
I am still inputting my macros into whatever the app is that I'm using. I've got my stationary bike. I need to eat clean and healthy when I'm down in my bunker. So I think that it's very difficult in my research to find good, healthy meals that are MREs. So do with that what you want.
There's also a increasing cohort of celebrity endorsements for this lifestyle. All the big names are getting survival bunkers. Sam Altman, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg. Everybody's getting a bunker. Sam Altman, you'd think he'd be busy, found the time to head on over to My Patriot Supply. He found the time to contract out a bunker build. Sees the need.
So Dan, this is a really interesting category, I think, for people because, you know, on some level, like there's these like ready packs, which are like really popular. That would be like the lower end of the market. Like, hey, I live in New York City. I just need to like get out of the city, you know, and then there's like these survival packs, which can get a little bit bigger, which is like if you live like I do, maybe on a couple acres, you're thinking, hey, I can like hold up here. But the real thing, if you've looked into any of this stuff before, that you need is leadership, cigarettes, and alcohol. So I think there's some room to sell that kind of stuff. But
interestingly, if you read the book 24 Hours Later or whatever, the day after, which is one of the best books on this particular topic, you're right. The most profitable skill set, leadership, also the most valuable survival leadership, because if you've got a bunch of booze in your bunker, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be a band of people that come up to you and say, look, it's for everybody now.
That's ours.
That's ours. And then you're going to need some leadership. So it's good to develop that in general.
Another thing that is an opportunity, I think, that you don't see on any of these sites that we mentioned is buying medical supplies, like antibiotics, for example, which would be very useful. The other thing on my list here is water storage. Okay. So when I built my house, I did water storage at my house, basically catching off the roof. If you have like a metal roof, you can catch water and then you can drink it if you basically put it through UV and filters and all that stuff. Bottom line is like that stuff is very expensive to do, and the way that the information is organized, like you have to do a lot of digging. So I think there's an opportunity for somebody to like put together like real resources and then sell the products, which a lot of people do, but the resources are hard to find in terms of like when you're building new systems.
There's this whole other movement, like, which is not doomsday, but it's sort of like a related trend of like homesteading or like remote work but I feel like there's a return to like this kind of project-based learning or homeschooling or alternative schooling, charter school, whatever. It's like we're not just like dunking the kids into public schools as much as 20 years ago. And so that's a trend. What are the solutions there?
Yeah, we saw it happen during COVID. You know, people pulled their kids out and then they started these pods. And then I think a lot of different schools started because of those pods. Another thing, just in like the kind of this prep realm, is a site called 360training.com. They have like certifications for basically everything you can imagine, like welding, plumbing, electrician, healthcare, OSHA, real estate, all these things. I was looking at their site. I think that site is like a big time site. Like they must be doing a ton of money. I think if you could just like rip one or two of those verticals out of there, we actually have some members in the DC that have done this, but just rip one or two of those verticals out of there and you got a multi-million-dollar business. Yeah.
I love that. Super clear, the ICP. You want to become X high-paid professional. We will get you started. Yep. We will get you that job. Yeah. Makes so much sense. Today's sponsor has a ridiculous deal for you. Whatever you're paying for email right now, they will beat it. Whether using ActiveCampaign, Klaviyo, ConvertKit, or anything else, Bento will beat it. You could save 50, 60, even 70% off. But more importantly, you'll get more. See, most email platforms are cold, corporate, complicated. But Bento feels like your friendly neighborhood coffee shop. The all-in-one email, automation, CRM, and transactional messaging platform where they actually know your name. Whether you're paying $30 a month or $3,000, you can do broadcasts, automations, transactional email, CRM, automated list cleaning, and even live chat. All included while you're saving money. It's built by a DCer. It's used by DCers like Authority Hacker, Primal Video, Drop-In Blog, ZenMaid, all using and loving Bento. The email nerds love it. The operators swear by it. So if you're tired of duct taping tools together or fighting support queues trying to figure out why your emails are landing in spam, this is your sign. Head on over to bentonow.com/TMBA and show them what you're paying now. They will beat it. You could save 50, 60, sometimes even 70% off. And hey, if you're already getting a screaming deal on your email, boom, they'll give you $300 in free credits. You pick, because you're listening to TMBA Now. What an incredible offer from our sponsor, bentonow.com. Check them out at bentonow.com. Head on over to the landing page, bentonow.com/TMBA, and tell them we sent you and supercharge your email in 2026. Okay, cool. So we talked about Homestead and Prep. How about the next one, number 4, going back to God? I think it's a trend for younger people to want to go back to church congregations. I didn't pull solid numbers on this, but there's a lot of great businesses that focus on people with emergent or trending belief systems. And a little bit maybe underrated, certainly by our podcast. We don't talk about this a lot, but a lot of these businesses can be fantastic. There's a business I saw called Sexy Modest. They're doing $6 million a year selling modest apparel for women to work out in, to travel in. And this is like an early adopter sort of thing, right? Like where these early adopter or innovative customers, the fanatics, they're so well networked. It's easier to find them. Once it gets general, it's like, oh, where'd you get that cool thing? Oh, I'm wearing Sexy Modest because this is like my value set. This brand has my value set. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for this. Producer Priscilla pointed out Gymshark has a partnership with Muslim athlete Lena Deeb, hijab style workout attire, like that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Like, what is your belief system? How is it trending? And where could you pivot it? You know, I don't think 20 years ago we were thinking about like belief system appropriate attire in the gym. Well, that's a thing now. Why not?
It's the riches are in the niches, you know? It's been a trend on Twitter for a long time, I think, for people to kind of like announce their religion. A lot of times, for whatever reason, like I think Christianity is like one of the more popular ones to announce on Twitter, you know, in terms of like your bio. And I think it's fine, but there's like a lot of dog whistling going on too around this stuff. There's certain groups that trend towards a certain religion, but they don't kind of out and say it, I think, until you like get there or get to know the folks. But I think there's probably value.
What you're saying is that there's a lot of brands that are huge that are either like Christian or Muslim or evangelical, but like you don't know that as an outsider.
Yeah.
They're not saying we're the evangelical.
Correct.
But that's how they built their, and that's the case with a lot of brands, right? They're built on a social movement.
Correct. But I think that there's probably value in 2026 because of the way that things are becoming more polarized, just like out and coming and saying it. You know, like I think you actually might attract more people if you're like, yo, this is like athletic wear for Muslims. FUBU did it 35 years ago. But, you know, like all different types of people were wearing that clothing. But that's not like how it started. It's fun to market. It's fun to be successful. I think for some people, it's also fun to weaponize these ideas. And that's where it like doesn't become fun for me, at least. So it will be interesting because I think that there's a lot of that going on right now to see like kind of how that plays out in 2026.
So be positive.
Yeah.
What you're saying. I think you can be like really positive with this stuff. And that's like the goal of the podcast, you know, like check out reinasignature.com. Do you know how much revenue they're doing? Streetwear style Christian apparel, where you're just like shouting out your belief in a positive way. There you go. Looks actually kind of cool.
You know, it's not so different. And they've got some examples on their site to sports teams, you know, sports teams for a lot of people are a religion and it's been working for a long time.
Exactly. All right. Our final one, lifespan optimization. I would say fairly Lindy trend or anxiety. We're talking about going back to God, talking about AI. All these things lead to the same end place, which is, you know, death and taxes. Essentially. But the interesting thing about lifespan optimization is that there's always sort of a new take on it. There's always sort of a new trend. Like we're seeing on Brian Johnson's the splash page right now. He's got bioavailable algae, not just algae. 50 years ago, people were just taking algae to improve their lifespan. Now we're taking bioavailable algae. We highlighted Jay Feldman on the program this year, who is attacking the same lifespan problems. We saw it with keto. We saw it with carnivore. There's all these new trends. Jay comes up and says, guess what? We're talking about bioavailability of energy now. And he's built a great business off of that. You talked about like riches and the niches. Producer Priscilla put in here a hot debate that I have actually heard a little bit of. This is protein versus fiber. Like there's this whole a study will come out and galvanize an industry that you need to eat 1 gram of protein per 1 kilogram of body weight per day. And now there's a new study that came out that said it's actually about you need to have enough energy production to actually recruit that protein. And so that study doesn't make sense. We're like sorting through all this stuff, building products around it, figuring out a way to get it to the people outside of the scientific studies, outside of the medical system, which a lot of people feel is failing them. A lot of opportunities around this stuff.
It does feel like there's a lot of opportunities here. I think from a marketing position too, the lifespan optimization is great because it's non-falsifiable.
For now,
right?
Yeah, we haven't researched it.
Yeah, and the Brian Johnson thing I think is conflicted for me because he says he doesn't need the money, but he is selling a ton of supplements. The other thing, I think I mentioned this in an episode a few weeks back, I'm all about the hair dye, but if Brian stopped dyeing his hair, which is clearly dyed, no one would believe that he is on track for increasing his lifespan.
Man.
Yeah.
You gotta go with the hair dye if you're selling youth. You got to.
But all jokes aside, this does seem like a huge niche right now. I think Tim Ferriss was one of the first people to kind of address this opportunity and the way that he was like experimenting on himself, and he like wrote a book about it. And so I feel like he's kind of the guy that kicked a lot of this off. It was like, hey, there's traditional medicine. Of course, we need that. But then here's what I'm finding in my own research. And now we have a bunch of people like Brian who have a bunch of money to kind of go explore these ideas on themselves in somewhat unscientific ways, it seems like so far. But I do think, again, like what you're saying at the beginning of the episode, it is like kind of the point at which we're at right now, which is like people are exploring. And so I think good things are going to come from that.
I think I just want to point out like one thing that all these categories have in common, which we did talk about, like selling across the aisle. Like if you're not a Christian, it might be hard to start a Christian brand, not impossible. So you have Brian Johnson doing this sort of gonzo approach where how can you know about the innovators or the early adopters if you're not one? I do think it's interesting, like there's a double-edged sword when you are positioning for these passionate nerds that are really, really deep into something. And I think it's a big part of being a part of these trends is like, jumping in yourself and understanding it and nerding out so that your marketing can be authentic and on pitch when you're going to the market. What gets me excited about trends like this, you talk about like celebrity endorsers. Obviously if like Kim Kardashian does something, it's going to be really popular, or Tom Cruise wears a certain suit, people are going to care about what it is. But to me, what's interesting is like when you've got these like nerd influencers, like the early stage influencers, how outsized their voices can be. I guess I just see a lot of that in a lot of the nerdy niches that I follow. Like there'll be these smaller influencers that the entire industry is listening to because of the authenticity of their voice and the way they're able to speak to the market. And I've seen a lot of products really, really flop because a big brand thought that they could just come up with a nerdy product but not have that authentic attachment to the industry. I'll tell a counter story in a way that it was done really, really well. We could do a whole episode about this guy. A guy who is absolutely crushing it with celebrity endorsements, brand partnerships, and new products is John Mayer. His signature guitar has been one of the best-selling guitars in the entire world in the past 5 years, and it doesn't have his name on it. It's kind of wild. So what happened was he was playing the most popular guitar in the world, the one that Jimi Hendrix used to play. And he went to this, made by the big brand Fender. He went to them and he said, I'd like to update some of these things because we're not in the 60s anymore. And they basically weren't willing to work with him. So he went with the nerdy underdog company and said, could you update Jimi Hendrix's guitar for me?
Which is who?
PRS, Paul Reed Smith, still founder-led. Paul Reed Smith is in founder mode, baby. He is still checking these guitars. He is the nerd leader, but not as big of a brand as these big brands. So he says, hey, maybe we could update this guitar. And you know what would be cool? Is if we really nerd out about all the details, because that's what I care about. That's what guitar players care about. And let's not put my name on it, because make it your own, right? And it is a brilliant strategy of a big brand taking advantage of this trend strategy of we want the fresh thing. They made all these sensible, smart 2020 sort of updates, and bam, is one of the best selling guitars in the past 5 years. Such a cool story of understanding the importance of winning the early adopters to these trends and the real nerds of a movement. So John Mayer's absolutely crushing it. And so let's accept and embrace the change. And meanwhile, the middle of the market's just groaning about digital products. And John Mayer's hey, digital's the future. Let's jump into this trend. And does it make the products that we grew up loving obsolete? Some of them, yeah, but let's not worry about the trend. Let's take advantage of it for the people that are passionate about change and sell things to them, because they're the ones with their wallets open looking for something new. Cool. So chalk it up. We got to do a John Mayer episode.
You got to trust your gut on this stuff. If you buy something because you really like it and then you start telling your friends about it, chances are you have good taste. And so you got to trust that nose when it comes to these things that we listed out here: lifestyle optimization, going back to God, homestead and prepping, AI, all these things. If you're in these communities, and you don't have to be necessarily, you can get into them now. But if you're in these communities and you're sniffing around and you see things that you think are going to be worthwhile and successful, time to go after it. Check it out.
Yeah, it's can we find communities that are taking advantage of societal or technological change, number one, and then number two, is there money there? So look at the incumbents. How are the cash flows converging around these shifts? I think that's the way to take advantage of these trends. And that's it for today. We didn't even get to aliens. Dang. So we're going to have to put that on the list of things to talk about in 2026.
Well, I'm sorry that didn't happen for you today, but I'm sure I'm going to get an earful after this this call about current state of affairs. So,
all right. Live long and prosper, boss man. Thank you for joining us, everybody out there. We will see you next Thursday morning if the aliens don't come.
See you then.